This company's mission is to provide manufacturers with a robotic solution that can be deployed against simple tasks in hours rather than weeks. Welcome to Rapid Robotics, and welcome to one more episode of Builder Nation. For today's interview, we have Jordan Kretchmer, co-founder and CEO at the company providing out-of-the-box manufacturing solutions. So welcome, Jordan. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for joining Builder Nation today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. My name is Jordan Kretchmer. I'm the co-founder and CEO, as Lisa mentioned, of Rapid Robotics. We're based in San Francisco, California. We also have a big office outside of Detroit, Michigan, where we assemble ready-to-deploy work cells of robotic arms that come knowing how to execute very specific kinds of manufacturing and warehousing tasks that only take about 1 to 2 weeks to deploy, as opposed to 9 to 12 months that it took historically.
What your guys are doing, I think it's really interesting because the fact of reducing the time, especially on this industry, is key, right? So I wanted to ask you, I was looking through the website and I know that you guys recently automated a traditional pad printing machine. So if you can talk a little bit about it, that would be great.
Yeah, you said timing, and that is such an important piece of the puzzle here. The reason we started Rapid Robotics about 3.5 years ago was because of the labor shortage. This has become an existential crisis for manufacturers. Every manufacturer, even the smallest manufacturers out there, have 5 to 10 open positions. And then the largest manufacturers have hundreds and hundreds of open positions for people to just load machines with parts, unload those parts, put them in a box, palletize boxes onto pallets, fill boxes with products. And so the labor shortage has actually been expanding at a far, far greater rate than the rate of robotic deployments. And the main reason for that is how long it takes and how complicated it is and how expensive it is to program a robot to do even a very simple task. And so that's why we focus there. And so everything that we've built from a technology standpoint is computer vision and AI and other IP underneath it that enables us to program a robot without actually typing any of the code to tell the arm what to do. And so the end result is a robotic fleet that knows out of the box how to execute common tasks at high reliability and enables us, because we're not sitting there manually programming a robot for months on end, we can deploy them at a far, far lower cost than historically been possible. And so we actually charge for our robots on a monthly basis. And so our customers look at our solution as basically robotic workers. It is a workforce of robots that can be trained really quickly to execute and deployed really quickly. And then we support those robots 24/7. So our customers never have to worry about an arm joint breaking or the gripper suction cup coming out. We take care of all of that. And most of the support tickets we get, we can handle remotely. So that's the problem we're really looking to solve is replicating the level of instincts that a human has working on a simple task and applying it to robots and enabling our customers to deploy very, very quickly to solve that labor shortage.
Really interesting. And I mean, that was actually one of my next questions, the workflow, because I was looking through the website and I was like, wow, this is really interesting because, correct me if I'm wrong, Jordan, you first go and then do like a quick diagnosis and then you identify the tasks that need to be automated. So this must be really interesting.
We get on factory walks all the time. So we have seen hundreds and hundreds of factories just in the last year or two. And our effort that we put forth is consulting with the customer and getting them to change their understanding of what it means to automate. So historically, automation projects were long-term, like 3 to 5 year planned projects. Usually a systems integrator is involved, right? And so the barrier of entry to that kind of automation is incredibly high. And so when we walk a factory floor, our customers a lot of times will start showing us, oh, I've been trying to automate this over here for the last 5 years and it's just too expensive. And we look and we're like, no. That is a year-long project. Take us over there where those ultrasonic welding machines are. And I see 5 people standing in front of ultrasonic welding machines, putting pieces of plastic into them and hitting a button. The ultrasonic welder welds the parts and they put it in a box. Take us over there. And they all look and they're like, well, it's going to be way too expensive to automate that simple task. We've tried before. The bids were $800,000. And we're like, no, that's why we're here. We're kind of like re-educating the market on what we call bottoms-up transformation. Instead of focusing all of your efforts and money on one big automation project, let us come in and chip away at what's easy for us, these low barrier of entry, highly repetitive tasks that are very robotic by nature. And you would think they'd already be automated, but because of those first issues I mentioned, they're not. So we then help them get that light bulb of, oh, I see, this is a drop-in work cell, right? That is really inexpensive. And I pay it on an effective hourly rate. And the end result is we can deploy to those tasks at a third or a fourth of the cost of even a single human operator on an annual basis. And so the value is extraordinary, but there is this, when we get on the factory floor, that's our moment where we can consult and educate the customer on this new approach and thinking about automating the easy stuff because our business model finally allows for that monetarily.
Wow, I have tons of questions. But I think this is really interesting. Okay, so you arrived at the factory, you arrived at the company, and you mentioned the fact of being able to relocate the people, like the market in general. So what do you think was the main challenge there? I know that it was back in 2019, but how do you feel like the industry has changed?
What's been interesting, when we started the company, our business model technically is robotics as a service, or RaaS. This was a new concept 3.5, 4 years ago. And we've been driving forward this idea that RaaS, robotics as a service, it's not just about leasing the robots. You're not just paying us monthly to lease this equipment. It is a comprehensive service that we provide, right? And so you look at us as a fleet management company, and that level of education, that's been, as you go up into bigger and bigger organizations, actually, it's been a little less challenging than with the smaller organizations. I think that the biggest challenge that we face is that there are so many different stakeholders within an organization. And this is smaller companies. We work with a lot of family-owned businesses where the board of the company are family members or the company's been in the family for a long time. That's a very different kind of educational process than when we're working with larger organizations. So Fortune 500 manufacturers who have automation teams and they have procurement teams. And so when we're working with the more family-owned or SMB businesses, we're focused on partnering with them to help kind of bring them along for the journey. And the education is different. It's more about can we facilitate your business growth? How can we help you as a contract manufacturer win more business away from your competitors and away from internationalization? And on the other side of it, you have the larger companies, so the Fortune 500 manufacturers, and those companies tend to have a lot of stakeholders. So you've got the chief financial officer, you have the head of procurement, you've got legal teams, you've got the in-house automation department who's responsible for doing big automation projects on the floors. And so each one presents their own suite of challenges for us. And one of the ways that we solve that is we actually have a whole stack of materials that are essentially mini white papers that we built for each stakeholder inside the business. And in our world also, as we work with larger organizations, HR departments become a really big component because those are the people who have the open headcount. So the HR people responsible for hiring 150 people to operate machines this year, those folks are actually always really excited to join the discussion with us because we solve one of their biggest challenges as well, which is when they hire 5 people, 4 or 5 more people leave within the next month. And so it's this leaky bucket problem. And so if they can hire robot workers, right, then they're formalizing that role and they're solidifying that work into that task without the risk of attrition. As a result of that, we have all of these documents that we put together that we share individually with each stakeholder in the business to help them, understand our business model, our technology, our service model and approach.
I wanted to ask you, we normally tend to speak with different leaders in the industry, and most of them are really involved in the procurement process. How does that work at Rapid?
We try to engage the procurement and the finance departments really early in this discussion. And a lot of that has to do with we're bringing a new business model to bear here. Our customers pay us monthly, right? Just like you would pay a human worker. And so the procurement departments and the legal departments and the finance departments, when they see these contracts, they don't look like any other contract I've ever seen. So they're used to a CapEx contract that has a big number that they can then put into a calculator and determine the payback on putting $1.3 million of CapEx into a deployment of some kind. And so our model is very different in that they pay us little bits of money over time. And so what they always come back and say is, oh, well, after 8 years, we will have paid you as much as it would have cost us to do that CapEx deployment for $1 billion. And our job is to come back and after that CapEx spend, if you go the traditional route with a systems integrator, that's the initial spend. There's ongoing cost of ownership, right? There's maintenance and support and parts break. Oh, and by the way, the lifetime of an arm is 5 to 7 years. And so if you have to replace that arm in 5 or 6 years, then you have to reprogram that arm. You have to pay for all of the new reprogramming. And at the end of the day, you end up paying a whole lot more. And then also the payback period of doing it the traditional way, paying $800 grand, $1 million of CapEx to a systems integrator, it takes you 4 to 5 years versus 3 shifts of human labor to even break even on that deployment. And so in our model, because we're only charging as little as $3,800 a month, that is the cost, basically 3/4 of a single operator. But if you have 3 operators throughout the day, 24/7 operation, our cost means that you are actually producing profits. You are profitable the minute you deploy a rapid machine operator because you didn't have to pay us $100,000 up front and then make money back over time through that cost savings. You get to recognize it and benefit out of that cost savings immediately.
Okay, so we talk about the company, we talk about the processes, we talk about the benefits. What about the challenges? What are the most difficult challenges talking on the hardware side?
The most difficult challenges, and this is probably not going to come as a surprise, right now, supply chain of extra componentry. We started the company right before COVID, before all the shutdowns happened. And us getting access to everything from metal and 80/20 and other kind of componentry was really, really easy. So now what happens is we actually have a great supply chain for the robotic arms and for the key major components of the system. But whenever there's a custom component needed, whether it's a conveyor that does something specific or an air blow-off station that's needed, visual inspection cameras, things of that nature, the supply chain for those items has gotten extended out. And so the biggest challenge we face right now is we are capable of deploying the system in under 2 weeks from the time a contract is signed. But in a lot of cases, we are in that consulting way that we're doing. We say, hey, look, we need to install this conveyor that allows us to index at a sub-millimeter level so that our cameras can make sure that we can clock into the box before we take stuff out of it. And so that conveyor might have a 9-week lead time. But that becomes a challenge and customers are busy. So that's sort of challenge number 1. Challenge number 2 is, and we work with really small manufacturers that do under 20 million a year in revenue. And we work with some of the largest manufacturers in the entire world. And between both of us, the challenge of we don't have the time to engage with you yet. So they'll sign a contract and they know that they want these robots and they know that they need them. But the customer has to clear the floor space. We work with them on updating operator instructions, and they're not yet ready to deploy those new instructions, or they need time to run airlines to that part of the facility to facilitate the robots. There's still work that the facility managers need to do. And because they are so busy, a lot of times that becomes a long pole in the tent as well. So those 2 things are some of the biggest challenges we have right now. In addition to, of course, educating this market, going back to that, right? We are educating all of the different stakeholders on the value of the RaaS business model and the support and services model that we provide.
Definitely, supply chain has been a challenge for a lot of companies, especially after the pandemic, and especially that you started 1 year before the pandemic. But you have managed through that, and I'm happy to hear that. So congratulations. It's an everyday challenge, right? As a founder, as a CEO, as a leader of procurement.
A lot of that is about building relationships, to be honest. I think one of the most important things that's starting to happen in the robotics space, there's a lot of new robotics companies in different sectors. So AMRs doing warehousing and e-commerce fulfillment, and companies like us, and then inspection camera companies that are all in the cloud. And so the more companies that are developing technologies that are cloud-based with robust APIs and SDKs, it means that we have the ability to now partner with a lot more companies a lot more easily. And so we have direct partnerships with a number of different technology companies that are value add to our customers that only took us 1 to 2 weeks to integrate into our platform because of the modern approach to developing software, which If you rewind even 5 to 6 years ago in the robotics space, you did not see really any cloud technology. And so it's really just in the last 5 or 6 years, you started to see cloud tech companies service the manufacturing sector and robotics sector. And the result of that is sort of a rising tide rise all ships kind of end result, where the more we can partner with other technology providers easily, the more value we can all add together to the market.
That's a great perspective, especially as a founder and CEO. I think that's the key to every successful company, building partnerships and collaborating together, because at the end of the day, you're working on the same industry, right? One of the last questions, Jordan, I wanted to ask you, what are the next steps for Rapid Robotics? Are you guys planning on expanding or releasing any other projects soon?
We're always expanding. At this point, we have deployments in, I think, 30 of the 50 states and growing. And so we're always regionally looking for new opportunities in states that we haven't deployed yet. Obviously, we're always looking to close new business in any region in the country. Going into probably the beginning to middle of next year, we're going to be looking at international expansion. That's something that we are getting pulled that direction, certainly, into both the European and the Asian markets, and been having a lot of discussions with companies over there about working with us to expand into those markets. The other thing that has been a big deal for the company is all of the larger manufacturing organizations that we are now working with. And so while we started the company and our core of our business will always be working with small to medium-sized manufacturers and providing technology for them that they don't have access to anywhere else, the largest manufacturers in the country and the world are experiencing the exact same problem, but at a much, much larger scale. And so where a small manufacturer might have 3 or 5 open headcount for machine operators, the large manufacturers, again, have 400 or 500. And so the problem exists there at such a large scale that we've been getting pulled market by these larger organizations and working with them in the exact same way, quickly deploying robotic arm work cells really affordably. And then with those companies not having to go hire multiple automation engineers to oversee and maintain those deployments once they're done, because we are 365, 24/7, watching the performance of every robot in our fleet live in the market and proactively taking measures to correct any sort of issues or errors that happen in those work cells. And so that level of value is vitally important for large companies as well as small. And so we've been doing a great job at moving up market and working with larger organizations. So we're going to see more of that this year as well.
Amazing. Rapid Robotics on International. Thank you for sharing that as well, Jordan, and thank you so much for being here with us today. Do you have any social media handles? Where can people find you or the company?
Yes, so rapidrobotics.com. Start there, and then definitely follow us on LinkedIn. Just search for Rapid Robotics, click the red logo. We tend to post a lot of content there, both internally about the company as well as about the industry and the market. And we post white papers and all sorts of other really interesting and educational stuff on there.
Yeah, that's totally true, guys. I looked at the website and LinkedIn, and I think it's great. Thank you so much for sharing amazing news on the industry. So thank you once again. And remember, guys, that you can also find more information, interesting articles, interesting interviews, just like this one with Jordan, directly on our website, ControlHub.com/builder-nation. We would love to hear from you. Once again, Jordan, thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure to have you on board.
Thanks, Lisa.